Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everyone out there in Caregivers World. I'm so happy to join you once again here on our Caregiver Support Podcast. I'm here with my friend Cheryl Field, who is one of the moderators in the Caregiver Support Group, and she is the author of Prepared. She's also a nurse, and she has many other accolades behind her name. And so today she's going to be sharing with us some tips on how self-care for caregivers can improve our job performance. And so I'm going to let her take it away, and I'll just chime in here and there. If there are any questions that you have throughout this podcast, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we will be happy to address them on our next session. Also, at the end, we'll be sharing how you can connect with Cheryl or connect with myself if you would like to chat further. I hope you find this meeting helpful, and I look forward to your responses. Take it over, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Whitney, and welcome everyone. This is really an exciting month as we celebrate National Caregivers. First of all, there's an official day, which is February 21st, but I think we're bigger than that. We need to really celebrate all week, or really to celebrate all month. And so I am honored to spend this time with Whitney to really remind each and every one of you just how amazing and how wonderful and how supported you are in your caregiving journey. And so what I like to talk about when I have these conversations with caregivers is ways that I can actually empower you to care for yourself. But what's so impactful is when you see the connection between caring for yourself and actually improvement in the care outcomes that you have in your interactions with your loved ones. So we all get into this caregiving journey, myself included. We get into this in order to bring love and for our loved one and to give. We get in it to give. And so when we start to think about taking care of ourselves, at first we think, well, that feels kind of selfish. But I'm here to tell you, I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've been a caregiver for probably 45 years. And before I was a nurse and got into the caregiving role as a nursing assistant. And within my own family, both as a mom and with aging parents, I become a caregiver. And I'm going to tell all of you that going into this role, thinking you can do this alone, that you don't need anyone else on your team, will result in a negative impact on your own physical health, mental health, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual health. Also have an impact on the care you're able to give and to deliver to your loved one. So since we all get into this because we want to give and provide care for our loved one and give them the best opportunity, and some of you get into it with the strategy of you don't want your parent in a facility. That's all great. But remember that you've got to take care of yourself. And that typically means adding more members to your team. And I hear the objections all the time that you're alone in this. I'm here to tell you, you can't be alone. Absolutely can't be alone. So again, my name is Cheryl Field. I do have a tremendous number of resources on my website, and I do answer questions. So if you feel the need to ask a personal question, I answer a lot of questions in our community, in our group. That's where we all collaborate. If it feels too private and you want, send me an email. I will absolutely help you find the resources that you need. My goal is to empower 1 million caregivers. I know that when I do this, I actually help promote your own health and well-being. I build resilience. And in nursing, guys, we don't actually love that word resilience. I think it has a little bit of a negative connotation for nurses, like, what's the matter? You're not tough enough. You're not strong enough. It's not about that. Resilience to me is flexibility. It's having the internal resources to adapt and to adjust. But you only get that resilience when you have cared for yourself, and your body, your physical system isn't always in fight or flight, which sends it into a type of panic. And when you live in that constant panic, you actually get quite sick. So I know that by empowering 1 million of you, if I can give you just small tips I'm not talking about working out for 2 hours a day. I'm not talking about, leaving weeks on end. I'm talking about small mindset changes, small things that you do each day that actually makes it better in the work that you do as a caregiver. Now, Rosalind Carter told us there's only 4 kinds of people in the world. Those who have already been a caregiver, maybe like myself, those who are currently caregivers, like all of you, in the work that you do every day. And I call you the unpaid caregivers, the family members who step up when someone else has a sudden change in health. You are currently caregiving. Some of us might be caregivers in the future, and all of us at one point will need care. So if we think about this dichotomy and this empowerment, we can really help to settle in. Now, the first tip that I want to give you is to find that non-negotiable. Find that one thing that actually charges you up, gives you some recharge. For some of you, this might be sleep. For many of you, this might literally be sleep. And if that is a non-negotiable in your caregiving journey, then you've got to have that conversation with the person you are caring for and say, listen, I'm committed to 16 hours a day, but I have to have 8 hours for myself. So if we can put a plan together that gives me an 8-hour night's sleep, I'm in. It's non-negotiable. Figure that out for you. Maybe it's your yoga class. Maybe it's meditation. I'm sure it's a combination of little things. And I talk a lot about some deep breathing, a simple cup of tea, and touching the earth, getting outside, standing on that back porch for 10 minutes with some deep breathing. Touch a rock, touch a tree, really connect. But you have to decide and determine what is it you don't have a choice about. What is your non-negotiable? Until you do that, you really are at risk for burnout. And I hear it in the community. I hear the hurt. I hear the sorrow. I hear the despair and the desperation. And that only turns around when you say, this for me is non-negotiable. And that's a choice that you have to decide you can't give. I share personal stories. My own father's 90 and a half. My stepmom who cares for him, she was really burnt out. And we had to figure out what were her non-negotiables. She was able to get out like an hour a day to go to the local YMCA and do some exercise. My dad wasn't really supportive. And I had to say to him, Dad, this is not a choice you get. If you want to live at home, you must allow for this time for her. That's non-negotiable. And maybe that means that you're waking up with a care companion in the house. Maybe that means that you're waking up to a note on the coffee table and your orange juice and your vitamins. Maybe it means you're waking up to a call with me, but you're not waking up anytime you want. And she's 100% going to be home because there's a time in the day where she goes for her exercise. And that gives her some mental clarity and gets her out of the house. The other thing, she's not a cook. She's not going to cook. So we do a lot of cooking. We pack and freeze food in their freezer. We also do a lot of ordering out of meals. And that's just, again, for her, non-negotiable. He still grumps about it, but he's known that. We have to say to him, that's not your choice. But what you do have, Dad, is all these other choices. Do you want the companion? Do you want to wake up alone? Do you want to just sleep till she gets back? Those are your choices that you could choose from. But having her not go, not a choice. Every single one of you have to figure this out and state your non-negotiable. Then give so many choices. Giving choice to your loved one, guys, is so empowering. I think we as caregivers, we start making so many decisions, we take away choice. We put out the food, we put out the clothes, we just decide. Switch that up. Think about the number of decisions you make on behalf of your loved one. Push it back on them. Here's a menu. What do you want? When I come back from the gym, make sure you've circled something. And when they say, oh, you decide, no, make them make some choices for themselves. When they do choose, it's very empowering and they feel a sense of purpose in their life and a sense of control in their life. And a lot of the negative emotions that come between us and our loved ones have to do with when we're feeling that that emotion, right? That negative feeling you get, sometimes I just get pissed off and I don't want to take it out on my loved one. And so, hey, you decide, you choose. What do you want to wear? Where do you want to go? What do you want to see? What do you want to hear? I'm not making all these choices for you. Give them the opportunity to get in the practice, and then they feel purpose-driven. The next thing I like to really talk about after we think about choice and the choices that you have is really about your strategy. And I kind of shared this, that, you know, as a daughter, as a son, as a caregiver, maybe a spouse, maybe a friend or a neighbor, you guys have discussed a plan. You're like, hey, you don't want to live in the nursing home, or you don't want to live in congregate housing, or you don't want to live in a group home. You want to be in your own home, or maybe you've moved into their home. What is that strategy? You're going to live with them until they die? Okay. Own the strategy, but delegate the execution. It really shouldn't be, hey, you're going to come live in my home, Mom, or I'm going to come live in your home, Mom, and I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be your full-time 24/7. I don't need to eat, sleep, poop, take time for myself. No, you have to delegate many, many steps in that plan. And one of the reasons I really encourage this is the reality. Caregivers, you guys get sick. You roll your ankles, you fall down, you break hips. And when you do that, if you are the entire plan, if you're the cook and the driver and the medication setup and the person who knows the history, and I got them dressed and I put them to bed and I get them, you do all those roles, when something small happens to you, the entire plan falls apart. And now let's be honest, you're the backup to all those people you delegate with. However, when you own the strategy, if the strategy is to care for your loved one in your home, that's great. The second piece of the strategy is we're going to have 3 or 4 members of a team. You're going to have to get some outside help. You're going to have companions. Maybe you need help with meals. Maybe you need help with laundry. Maybe you need help with, keep going. Name those tasks, the cooking, the break that you need. Guys, going into it, accepting that you will do it all, it's a recipe for disaster. You will be burnt out. And when you're burnt out, I'm going to tell you, you don't give good care. You're going to lose your temper. These are situations where I see some abuse and some assault actually happen between loved ones, because it's not what's best for us as humans. So I love your strategy, but you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. And you got to delegate some of those steps. Now, just before the holidays, my father actually had a small stroke at home. He refused to go to the hospital, and so he laid in his bed. He knew something was happening. They laid in silence, and he really thought he was just going to die in the bed. The next morning, he called me, and we talked about the strategy to live at home and to never go back to hospital is okay, but I needed to delegate and support him with a better program. There's no way I want my dad laying in bed dying alone, my stepmother terrified next to him, which is exactly what they experienced. So we talked about it, and he went into a hospice program. And I said to my sisters, he's either going to thrive on this program for the next year and they'll kick him out, or he's going to thrive on this program and he's going to pass in the next year. But either way, he's going to thrive because he loves knowing that the nurse comes to him every week. The doctor comes to him. And last week, a musician came to their house, played a couple of songs, and they were singing along. This is us delegating the execution. It was very difficult for my sisters to think about my dad enrolling in a hospice program. He's 90 and a half, almost 91. But the truth is that my stepmom is getting so much support, and she has a phone number she can call 24/7, not me, I'm thousands of miles away. And that nurse will come to her house and support whatever is happening with my dad, which is what he wants. That's his strategy. So again, own the strategy, but delegate the execution. My father's been complaining for the last 6 months of his life that he's bored, there's nothing to do, he can't move. And this is the first time when I spoke with him the other night, I said, how was your day? That he actually spontaneously said, my day was really good. From this musician who played songs. We never would have thought of having a person like that on our team. And I never want to not have that person on our team going forward. So think about the role that you have in strategy and get comfortable, being uncomfortable with strangers coming into your home to provide care, to provide different types of the care. That is what I really think about when I say, let's talk about how we execute this. And that's kind of another example of identifying resources. Like, what resources do you need as a caregiver? Maybe it's this group. I love this group that we can all talk and get our frustrations out. But there's also resources for them. And as I shared that, when you get near the end of life, you kind of want to talk about it. And my dad would talk about, end of life, and everyone in the family, oh, don't talk that way. But you know what? He wants to talk about it. I kind of think of it as myself, and when I'm going through menopause and perimenopause, guys, it's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted someone to listen and understand and give me advice. And if everyone around me said, oh, don't talk about it, that would have been really frustrating. So a great resource we've recently identified with my dad is having some clergy come visit him. He's Jewish in background, and this person came by that wasn't Jewish, but you know what? They had a really good, comfortable talk about end of life and spirituality. That's what my dad needed. And while they were having that talk, my stepmom got a 20-minute break where she could walk around and get outside and get that nature. So identify resources that work for you, like this group, but also identify resources for your loved one. And even your loved ones, because guys, the whole family is going through this caregiving situation. Even those persons who are absent, oftentimes I find that the family member who is completely absent really hasn't come to grips with the fact that your loved one is declining or your loved one needs care. They're no longer that big, strong mentor we looked up to as parents. The roles have reversed, and now we see them declining. And for me, the feeling that for that is grief. I remember the moment I began to grieve that my strong parent was declining and not going to be that strong parent I'd always known them to be. So I needed to get some resources. Now, for some of you, this might mean finding respite, finding a week where your loved one actually does go into an institution and receives care and you get a break. Guys, every job should come with vacation. It's a time to restore. And when you do think about how do I find a good provider? Well, you can go right to Medicare.gov. You can look at Care Compare. There's websites where you can compare some providers. And if you want more help with that's kind of an area where I say, hey, shoot me an email. I'll help you to figure that out. But I don't want you to go into this thinking that you need to be alone. Many of you I've heard are still juggling caregiving and work. That's true for me. I work full time. I do this caregiving work and the mission that I'm on outside of my time. And I'll tell you, when my mother was very ill back in 2009, 2010, I didn't do this. I actually was very burnt out. I was juggling work. I was juggling her. I was, at the time, back in 2009, like we had multiple cell phone plans and everything was based on how many minutes you had. And I had sisters on different plans, and I had a BlackBerry and a regular flip phone. And one time I'm literally talking on 2 different phones at the same time. I'm traveling for work and tears are streaming down my face. I'm trying to give them an update to my sisters. And I literally was at the back of a restaurant, and the bartender came over and put down a drink and said, hey, you kind of look like you need this. I was so burnt out, and I wasn't courageous. I wasn't vulnerable. I wanted to keep all of this from my employer. I was afraid. But the truth is that there were programs through my employer that I didn't take advantage of. I even ran out of time off and was starting to take time without pay. But then I learned that there was another program where people with tons of time could give it. If you're working and you're in a caregiving role and your loved one is going through some stuff, share it with your employer. Learn what resources are available. This is a hard lesson for me that I learned the hard way. It does take It means we are vulnerable. And I know that I know you can do it. For your loved one, let's figure out who's paying for their care. This is this next tip. So many conversations that I overhear and get involved in where the caregiver doesn't really know what the insurance plan will cover. Now, your loved one, if they're over 65, is probably dealing with a Medicare, a managed. In many cases, you can be of Medicare age, over 65, and financially qualify for Medicaid. So you may find out that they actually have both insurance plans. And depending upon the situation, one of those is going to be the primary payer who's going to pay the first part of the bill and who's going to pay the last part of the bill. So if you go into the hospital, that's Medicare. Then you come back home and you need services at home for a period of time. It might be Medicare, it might be coming through the VNA, and then it might go to Medicaid. So figure out, one, who is their insurance and how do they help support you in your strategy? I don't think it's a good idea to commit to a strategy of caregiving where you quit your job, you're paying all of the bills from your personal savings, and you're depleting your own health and energy. Guys, this is not a good strategy. And chances are it's not going to sustain the life of your loved one. Many of you are caring for chronically ill people that could live for another 3 to 5 years. So I want to help you think about all of the resources, including your payer, who are part of this plan to care for your loved one. Listen, caring for them at home is the most affordable place. Those insurance companies are going to work with you. And many of them are actually paying caregivers an hourly wage when you're doing some of the work at home. So ask these kinds of questions. Again, just by asking questions and getting information, you become empowered, right? You learn the system and you can see the amount of choices that you have. For all of us as caregivers, we need to think about how we can prevent a change in our own health. And I really want you to tune into your body, to listen, and to hear when things are not well, right? If you're crying all the time, if you're weepy, if you don't have any resistance to changing plans that really throws you off, you're not sleeping at night, these are signs that you yourself need to care for yourself. Listen for those same changes in your loved ones and act on them early. So if there's a little pain in the tummy or a little change in bowels, let's call the doctor and check in before those small problems become bigger problems. Now, for all of us at any age, every single one of us listening to this, movement is your best friend. And people ask me, what kind of movement? Any kind of movement. It's so good. Raising your arms out to the sides, down below, taking a deep breath, and doing that twice. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to put on any special clothes, but movement is your best friend. So get out for those short walks. Put on the music. Get moving in the house. Go up the stairs if you have them versus avoiding. Encourage your loved one to do the same kind of movement. Bingo, right? Playing chess gives you some upper body movement. Hand washing. Get your loved one in front of the sink. Let them wash their hands. Get them to play in the water. Good for infection prevention and control. Get those hands clean. Do your movement every single day. That really helps to pay attention to those signs of change, and movement can help us feel healthy. Again, this is actually a picture of my mom, and I tell this story a lot that as a caregiver, we are advocating for our loved one. And that means that there's certain realities that we are going to face. We have to be speaking up. We have to be coming in from a position of asking questions, being curious, not just listening and saying, oh, that hospitalist knows what he's doing. My experience is they don't. Not that they mean not to do a good job with your loved one, but that when you are a hospitalist and you work for a hospital and you work 24 to 48-hour shifts and you don't sleep, you make mistakes, and you can't know these patients the way families can know. I learned some of these lessons that I teach. I have a book called Prepared, a healthcare guide for aging adults. I wrote that book. It's full of the lessons I learned more so as a caregiver than I learned as a nurse. Like as a nurse, I was taught what was supposed to be happening, what the right things were. And then as a caregiver, I observed, hey, this stuff's not going right. And I learned how to show up differently and ask questions and come up with checklists. And I put those checklists and those tips and those questions to ask in this book so that when your loved one's in the hospital, like for me, my loved one was in the hospital, I wasn't asking about their orders and when they were last receiving their doses. And it resulted in a medication error that ultimately was a part of my mother's life ending soon. It was exhausting. I knew that this role was hard for me, but when I devised these systems, then it got easier. And I actually saw better outcomes like I'm seeing with my dad. Again, through lessons that I learned by trying to do it all myself, I actually get better outcomes when I bring in those resources and other people and team members, because my mental health is better. I can then advocate for health outcomes and really be the best caregiver that I am, taking care of myself and, wow, seeing improved changes in the life of the loved one. So I talk a lot about these tips. It's been about, I try to keep this to about 30 minutes. These are themes. Guys, these themes apply everywhere. Own your strategy, right? You're doing a birthday party for your kiddos. Great. Own the strategy. Delegate the execution. Say, hey, we're going to have cupcakes. We're going to have 10 kids. We're going to go to this place. So who's on the cupcakes? Not you. Delegate that. There's applications here in healthcare. There's applications in ethical decision-making, like how we think about the world. I think every aspect of our life, from little to big, we can own the strategy. We can delegate the execution. When you have this conversation with your family, do not allow them to take away your non-negotiable. Like we said in the opening, if you need 8 hours of sleep, okay, how about 4 or 5 hours sleep? That's a non-negotiable. Don't say yes if the plan doesn't support that. Do not say yes. You have to look after yourself and really bring a team of people together. Because when you do, you get the best outcomes. And guys, that's what we're in this for. We're in this work for the best outcomes. The hardest thing for me was to realize I wasn't what was best 24/7, 7 days a week. I'm the best 10, 12 hours a day, but then I need to repair. I need to heal. I need to restore. I needed to remind myself that I was worthy of self-care. And sure, I can be Wonder Woman the rest of the time, but I needed to look after myself. And once I started doing that and really doing that, guys, the whole care got better for my loved ones and for myself. And that's really the message I hope you're hearing today, is that you are worthy. You are worthy of self-care. You should not take this word guilt and set it aside. We can't be guilty for needing to being a part of a plan and not a 24/7, 7 days a week for the rest of their life plan. We're not here to sacrifice for someone else. We can be a part of the plan, and you might even own that plan. But again, you are so worthy of self-care. This, as we celebrate National Caregivers Day, I know you come to work on and off the clock, right? Where you're just donating and volunteering time to your loved one. And you come into that with genuine compassion and love for that person. And I want every day to be a good experience. And so I hope that you will just take a couple of pieces of advice from today and tweak your plan. Start small. I'm going to say that 6 months ago, my father had no additional resources in the home besides my stepmother. And we had an emergency situation right before Thanksgiving where I called it a vacation staycation, Operation Vacation Staycation. What did that mean? We needed to separate them. They were arguing, yelling, screaming. She said to me, I think I could hurt your dad. And so she flew up here to stay with me. And my other family had to go down to be with my father. And yeah, it was uncomfortable. And yeah, we forced some people to buck up and be a part of this plan. And then we got some more resources coming into the home. I talked about the cooking and the food and her getting an exercise class and, joining up with some of the VNA services and having the doctors come to them instead of her dragging him to appointments, and having some hard conversations with my dad to say, no, Dad, that's not a choice. You are worthy of those investments. You hear me say it all the time, with age comes change, be ready. This is the book that I wrote called Prepared. It really has all these helpful tips in it. I have a ton of free resources on my website, which is here on the last slide, cherylfield.com/resources. And as I said, if you have questions, guys, I am here. I am here and I will answer. I even will show you my cell phone. Call me. I will happily help you. My goal in all of this is to make your caregiving journey easier and not have some of the scars, right? Those lessons learned that I've been through, the mistakes that I've made, and the negative care outcomes that came from my trying to own and do it all. And so I hope that this has been helpful to you. And even, Whitney, I know you are in a caregiving role. And so I hope some of this will be helpful to you as well.
Absolutely. I think that we can never hear enough about self-care. I know that that's been the burning topic over the last couple of weeks, especially in the caregivers group, because I feel like a lot of times we feel like this is the one job where we have to work independently. And it's not. Independence will lead you to burnout. It is I remember when years ago I worked in long-term care, and, first shift would come in. If something's not done, they would say, oh, third shift didn't do it. Third shift come in, something's not done. They would say, oh, second shift didn't do it. Well, it is a 24-hour job, which means that whatever you didn't pick up, whatever you didn't do, that means the next shift or whoever else is coming on or whoever else is on the team, they just have to pick up and keep on rolling. And I say that to encourage you to expand your team. If you are the only one doing every single thing, and I know Cheryl spoke a lot about this, is that you have to expand your team. Also, another key tip that I want to reiterate that she talked about was making sure that you have not just your team, but making sure that you have other resources available, and making sure that you're very clear on your non-negotiables. I often hear people say, well, I don't have enough time to do anything. I'm the person that does everything. It's not enough time. I have to take care of this person. I have 4 clients. I have this, I have that. Your non-negotiables mean that, look, at this time every day, whether it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, I need to be here. I need to sit down. I need to decompress. I need to be able to go outside. I need to be able to pick up a magazine, something, so that you can have that moment just to yourself. And that is nothing that you should feel guilty about. And to be honest, if you don't have time, it's your fault. And I'm just being I feel like I need to say that, because as you learn and as you go on this journey, you're going to learn that you have to take ownership. So you not having time is you taking ownership, saying, look, well, this is my fault. This is where I need to make more time for self-care. This is where I need to prioritize. This is where I need to strategize. This is where I need to delegate. All of those things are important. And I think that, we can't use it as an excuse that I don't have time, because out of the 24 hours in a day, you can make time for the things that you feel are important. And I think a lot of it is that people as caregivers, because I've been there before, where you just don't feel like you're important anymore. You lose all of your worth by pouring into caring for someone, whether it's long-term, short-term, family, job, friends, whatever. You feel like you lose all of your value. And that's not the case. Caring for someone basically being serving them. That's what you're doing in another capacity. That increases your value. So because you're pouring out so much, you have to make that time to pour back into yourself. And
So
so
well said, Whitney. One thing that I hear so much from loved ones, I think through caregivers, is that the loved one has decided they don't want any stranger taking care of them. Right? They're like, no. Imagine this. I'm getting older, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to live in my own home, and I don't want any strangers here. See, if you give that choice to your loved one, you're sunk. And this is what I say to people. Listen, we're all going to get old. We are all going to lose function. We are all going to lose capacity. It's going to happen to me. Like you, Whitney, I worked the first 17 years in a nursing home where people were there because they had lost some kind of function, some kind of capacity. So you can live in your own home, lose function and capacity, and receive services from strangers in your home. And by the way, this will cost you some money. So be clear, loved one, service a stranger in your home and you're going to pay for it, loved one. Or you can live in an institution with strangers. And guess what? You're going to pay for that. But the option of living at home with no strangers and your kids are going to pay for it, guys, it's not an option. You can't give that option to your loved ones. That is, to Whitney's point, that's someone who's saying, I'm not worthy. You are so worthy. Caregivers, you are the VIPs on this call. You are the most important person. We have to protect you. Don't you see? We have to keep you sustained or the plan falls apart. But you're not going to do it all. You can't do it all for very long before you burn out. So anyway, caregivers, remember this month when it's your National Day on the 21st of February that you are the VIPs. And please keep letting us support you. Tell us what else you need. This is your community, and we're just so grateful that you're here.
Thank you, Cheryl, so much for allowing me to join you. I always love to hear your spills. I think that you have a lot of great topics that people kind of just need to hear over and over and over again until it all just settles in, and they take it in and not forget these things, because it's very important that we be reminded. We just have to be reminded of that it's okay. It's okay to own the strategy. It's okay to delegate, that it's okay to be in this place, and we don't have to be burned out in doing that. And so thank you so much for joining. If you were able to catch it, I'm going to add her contact info one more time on the screen there. She has her email address there, her phone number for questions, and also a resource tab. So if you're needing a place just to start looking for resources, that link can be very, very helpful. And also she has where you can purchase her book online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Walmart. So be sure to connect with Cheryl. Also, if you would like to connect with myself, I'm in the caregiver support group, but all of my socials are my name, Whitney Rochelle. So you can always find me on one of my socials, as well as I will give you my website. I'll put that up at the bottom in the chat. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you again, Cheryl. And happy National Caregivers Day. Caregivers, you are the VIPs. I love that, Cheryl.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Whitney.